is up, guys, and welcome to this special Guarani Vision preview for Paraguay at the Copa America happening in the United States. I'm Roberto Rojas, joining me by my two great co-hosts, Fede Perez and Ralph Hannah. And guys, here we are. The Copa America has officially begun. It officially started yesterday night at the time of recording when we saw Argentina beat Canada 2-0 in Atlanta. But Paraguay's tournament begins this Monday against Colombia before traveling out from Houston all the way to Las Vegas to take on Brazil on next Friday, and then finishing it off in Austin against Costa Rica. Obviously, a lot to discuss on Paraguay. And really, in a way, we go into this tournament with a bit of pessimism, I would say. But obviously, as we've been doing here at Guarani Vision, speaking about the big tournaments like a Copa America, World Cup qualifiers, friendlies, whatever it may be, we are here to do it. So we're obviously decked into the Roja. Obviously, we do want to show our support, even if the team hasn't been performing as well as we want to, but that doesn't mean we can't be open to discussion and also have the little bit of hope that we have here on the program. So let's get the ball rolling here. Let's go all the way to Fede Perez, who, Fede, I want to go to you first because obviously you're on the ground. You're always involved in the Paraguayan media, more so than maybe myself and Ralph have, obviously, because not being there. But you have to think that in previous Copa Americas, I don't think I've ever felt more or less confident about a Paraguay team than before. I remember seeing Copa Americas since 2004. That was my first ever one. And I could always remember that Paraguay were always in the discussion of being able to do something, especially qualifying out of a group stage. But in this particular case, I feel like the morale is really down. Is that how you're personally feeling, Fed, and what others have been feeling? But, firstly, welcome. Happy to always have you here on another great preview episode for Guarani Vision for the Copa America.
Hey, Roberto. Hi, Rob. Hi to everyone listening to Guarani Vision. It is finally here, the tournament that we've been waiting for probably the whole year. The biggest tournament, definitely, that our Roja, our national team, will play in 2024, even though I know a lot of people, I've heard Ralph say it several times, the important thing is going back to a World Cup. You got to do something in this Copa America. We got to show our pride. We got to be a good team. We have to build up something out of this championship. It could be just a short week of games for Paraguay if we don't do something against Colombia and Brazil. And then we're going to face Costa Rica, just like you mentioned, Roberto. We're going to preview each game. We have been talking about these games the last couple of episodes ever since the local tournament actually ended. And we've been kind of heating up with the friendlies that we had. We played 3 friendlies, more than enough games, more than other countries even played before this tournament of the Copa America that has already begun. We saw Argentina do it kind of not easily, but do it in a big way against Canada. We're going to have to probably wait and see until the last day of the groups, right? I think we're going to be the last ones to get into action with Brazil also doing their thing in our group. We'll see how it starts, but I would definitely want to see certain things. We want to see certain players. We want to see a style of play, and we definitely want to see some goals and some wins in this Copa America. We're definitely going to talk about everything that has to do with this Roja and the way they head into this Copa America.
Absolutely. And what better way to do it than obviously two people who are here in the United States? As we had mentioned, we'll be attending the 3 Paraguay games. Obviously, we had Guarani Vision credentialed for the event. This is the first time that we've seen it happen. So obviously a wonderful achievement for all of us. And obviously Ralph is the one that will get the chance to be there in the mix zone, to be there behind the scenes, to be what they're, following the Paraguay team, at least in the ones in Texas. I'll be in Las Vegas for the Brazil game. But yeah, Ralph, I need to go to you first on this one because obviously you've been able to kind of snoop around what's been going on in Paraguay. They are in Houston. They are in technically your hometown. And yeah, I just wanted to know your thoughts of being able to go to another Copa America because obviously you've been to previous Copa Americas before. Now you're here at another one following Paraguay. You've always been to also international tournaments as well. So more so, before we go into kind of the discussion of what we'll see on the pitch, I just want to ask you how you personally feel going back to see to see another international tournament with Paraguay involved.
Yeah. Hey, Roberto. Hey, Fede. Hey, everybody. Yeah, I know. It's good, right, to be back. I mean, I was lucky enough to cover Paraguay in the CONCACAF Gold Cup just in February because the girls played all 3 games here in Houston. But this is the first Copa America I think I've been to since 2007 when Paraguay were also a much stronger team. Well, they were starting to come as a strong team because that's when Tata Martino was bringing the team up. And then they go on to do all those great things in the World Cup. And and everything that now is kind of ingrained in Paraguayan football history. And I guess maybe are we on the verge of something new here? It doesn't feel like it. We have a lot of very good players, but at the moment, I think everybody is concerned about how to fit those into their system. Are we going to get the best out of our players? Is everybody kind of on the right wavelength with the coach? So there's a lot of questions going into it. In terms of the vibe here in Houston, I mean, it's very hot. It's Texas. I don't think anybody has a problem though from the Paraguay team. They've been training around 6 p.m., 7 p.m. So when it's not too hot, it's very low key, I would say. I mean, you just kind of, with a tournament like this in such a country that's so big, you just kind of assimilate, right? So there's not really a huge sense of feeling of the Copa America coming to Houston. It's just one of many events that are happening in such a big city over the summer. You have Mexico, Jamaica are playing tomorrow, for example, so that there will be lots of Mexico fans, I'm sure. And then we'll see a lot of Colombian fans and maybe some Paraguayans down at the game on Monday. But it's definitely very, very kind of low key and relaxed. I think the staff are relaxed. The players I haven't been able to see yet, but in terms of what we're seeing from the training, it just seems to be like everybody's enjoying themselves at the moment before the serious stuff really starts. And I mean, one really important thing to say is Paraguay got here technically like 3 days early. So the Copa America starts for you 4 days before the first game. Paraguay got here early because they came from the Panama friendly. So it does mean that Danny Garnero has now had the team for the longest time since taking over. So we've been very worried about him in terms of getting his players to understand what he wants to do, or more to the point, finding the right position for each player. But now he's had much more time going into this Colombia game than he ever has before. So that's something as a positive we should just pick up on as we look ahead to this Copa America.
Yeah, and I think we obviously want to see a better improvement than what we've seen in the friendlies, because I think let's go into that, because obviously Paraguay, as we've mentioned, played 3 friendlies before the start of this game, the start of the tournament against Colombia. We saw 3 different results for Paraguay. We saw a draw against Peru, a 0-0 one, a 2-0 loss to Chile, as we'd mentioned in the last episode. But we also saw a win. Paraguay finally won a game. It wasn't in the most flashiest circumstances. It was a 1-0 win thanks to Gustavo Velasquez's goal. And I wanted to go to Ralph on this one first, because obviously, you have always preached about the notion of being able to go back to the old ways of Paraguay and how they've been always, and that's always been a debate about how we have to always go back to our virtues. You saw that well in the goal, a centro cabeza goal, across a header and a goal. I think that's obviously something that we've always been historically known for and kind of become the envy, and you would say, in all of South America. And here we have a team that hasn't been able to score a goal since the Bolivia game, which was back in October. Here they are scoring their first goal since, with that kind of traditional value. So, I wanted to go to you first, Ralph, on what you thought of this game. We'll obviously then, go around the room with Fede's opinion, but just your thoughts on this game, what we saw against Panama. And, a win's a win, even if there is always that kind of feeling of like, yeah, we should have done better or whatnot. But ultimately, we got the win, and I think Garnetto will feel happy. But there's still obviously a lot to improve if you're going to have to step it up with the likes of Colombia and Brazil to be able to get out of the group.
Yeah, that's right. I think, I mean, it was important to get a win. It was great to get a goal, and also from that source, right? From a corner from Mati Rojas and a header from Gustavo Velasquez. And so that's it. Sometimes just going back to the basics when you're not having good results and when you're really trying to find yourself, find your system. Maybe it is just do the simple things right to start. And that's what we didn't see in contrast in the Peru game. In the Peru game, there was a lot of short corners. In this world of analytics, I understand the short corners very rarely lead to a goal. So I don't know why they even bother with it, right? Just get the ball in the box, especially when you have the players that Paraguay have. We just had the preview episode for Brazil with Peter from Santos, and as he mentioned, Gustavo Gomez is a player that scores so many goals as a defender, and so we have him. We have that opportunity. So I think with set pieces, and if we're going to play Mati Rojas, as he played 2 of the 3 friendlies, which was quite interesting. If we are going to play him, he's obviously got a great left foot in terms of set pieces as well. People in the US have already seen that when he scored that goal for Inter Miami with Messi unable to take the free kick. So I think we should be looking at some of those basics, right? As we try and just find any way we can start to pick up results and go forward with something. But yeah, about getting a win to go into the tournament, I think that was also really important because at some point you can think about systems and ideas and tactics, but at one point you just need to win games and start to feel good, right? And the group of players kind of trust each other that they are able to try and get some results. And that's what tournament football is all about, right? It's all about just trying to get the results. You don't always have time to make too many adaptations or changes as the tournament goes on because the games are so quick. Paraguay's going to have these 3 games coming up in basically a week. So it's a lot of it's kind of a heavy load of games. And so they need to just get through them and be able to find any way they can to score goals and get those wins.
I think that's important, Fed. I wanted to go on you that, and I think that's a good point. Looking at the way that we do it, and we even saw it yesterday. I mean, obviously they didn't get the win at the end of the day, but we obviously saw Canada give Argentina, kind of that danger, and I think ultimately that allows something that for Paraguay, if they're looking at that when they're taking on teams like Brazil and Colombia, where they go as underdogs, like Ralph had said, I think the ultimate point is to win games because that's how you're going to do it. I think winning the games is what matters. And yes, obviously, you might have your opinions on how to win, what your ideology is, and how a system should do it. But I think, like you had mentioned, with tournament football like this, as long as you get your 3 points, even if it's like a gritty 1-0 win in the last second or whatever, that's more than enough.
Yeah, I'm totally with you guys. We need results. We need to build something in that locker room. We need that good attitude also from the players. And it's great that we had that win against Panama, even though nobody was totally happy with the 1-0 because we really suffered in the second half. But it's a win. And just like you're saying, Roberto, right now, after losing so many games, after not feeling like a winning team, you need that feeling in the locker room, especially with the new players, with the new names. You need to build that good relationship. And I do think that's what Ralph was kind of talking about in these training sessions right before facing Colombia. I mean, you're coming off a win, you're coming off taking that weight off your shoulders in certain points, and players are fighting for the spots. I mean, nobody really has their spot secure right now. Even the stars in this team, even though a lot of people are saying, no, we're still going to see Gustavo Gomez star. We're still going to see Miguel Almiron star. We're going to see certain players that have been part of this team for a while now, but we're seeing new names, and that's kind of exciting also. I think a lot of people are waiting to see the best version from the young players, Ramon Sosa, Julio, from Julio Enciso also, and they're not just the only new faces in the squad. So there is kind of a change in that sense, and I'm still waiting for that effect, right? And especially from Daniel Garnero. I mean, he's the one that needs to make the right calls after seeing 3 very different friendlies, like you said, Roberto. I mean, he needs to take the best thing out of all 3 games, find the best players to put up a strategy against a very strong team. I would say the strongest in the group as we're heading into the first game. Colombia is the hottest team coming into the tournament, probably. They got all the respect. They get all the respect from everybody. I think I even heard Lionel Messi saying, "Hey, watch out for Colombia." I mean, they're one of the candidates. So if Messi's saying that, we need to watch out for Colombia, and they're going to be running in hot. But that could be in our favor also if we're a defensive team, if we know how to counterattack, if we get some good set pieces like we've been showing lately. I think we've been evolving, working on that, and especially with Gustavo Velasquez, he could be a very, very important player. We've seen him get a lot of headers in the opponent's box. So I'm really looking forward, maybe into building a stronger defense, Roberto, not conceding goals like we've been used to, and maybe getting an opportunity to control the matches like we had against Panama. Against Panama, we scored, and then we were able to secure the win. Hopefully we have that opportunity against Colombia, against Brazil, against Costa Rica to kind of be the strong team in field, right, and not suffer as much as we've done in these last games, even in the last official tournaments that we played.
Yeah, and obviously, I think that's ultimately the goal. And let's go to the first game. Obviously, happening on Monday, it is Paraguay against Colombia. Obviously, Ralph, going to you on this one. These are two teams that typically have very, very close history. Obviously, their records are very, very similar when it comes to historical significance. But Colombia have gotten the upper hand in the last few Copas. I remember going to two of them actually, the last two that they played in Brazil and the United States, and they beat them but barely beat them. 1-0 win in Brazil and then a 2-1 win over there in the Rose Bowl. So I think looking at Colombia moving forward, and we also got the we barely lost to them 1-0 in Asuncion the last time that we played. I think even though Colombia have looked very good, and they looked very good in what we've seen so far, 23 games unbeaten. I was able to go to the game against Bolivia the other day, and they just wiped the floor against them. I think what we saw from players like Luis Diaz, John Arias, obviously James Rodriguez being such an important player. And I'm going back to obviously Simon, which we'll listen. You can be able to listen here very shortly on our channel. I think it's going to be very interesting to see how Paraguay can do with those pacey wingers. I think a team that has a lot of freedom, and I think ultimately it is the game to beat because I think, relatively speaking, when you look at how all the three teams fare and in order, and obviously it's your first game, so obviously you want to get on the right foot. I think all of the attributes are there for Paraguay to go in and get something if they need to, because that is ultimately their goal. I think that's for them the opponent that they have to beat in order to go out of the group. And like, of course, like they'll face Brazil, and we need to wait and see what happens from them in their game against Costa Rica. But this is the game. This is the must win of the three. To firstly because of how similar that they typically are when they face each other, and secondly because it's the team that, when you look at it from a quality perspective, maybe from an individual standpoint, it's the one they're most similar to in this one. So I think it's the one that Paraguay, if they're going to do something, they have to go out and get the win if need be.
Yeah, I think it's a very big ask though to try and beat this Colombia team that's in such good form as you mentioned, with some great individuals. We saw them. The game I saw that we both watched was the friendly in Miami I think 2 years ago. So that when Paraguay really they just couldn't get any possession in that game. That was with under Barros Schelotto, was trying to play much more direct, and Colombia kind of just picked them off in the second half as they like up the tempo. And I think that's where Paraguay are going to really have to be careful, because this Colombia team, when they get into good rhythm and start playing and moving the ball, it could be too much for Paraguay, especially if they're missing, because we're hearing whispers of this, but if they're missing Cubas as the holding midfielder, he's going to be such a key player to try and stop James, but also to try and bring some of that balance in midfield. And the interesting thing about Colombia is, because even though they're a relatively fast team, they don't really use the wings as much. That might actually help Paraguay, because where Paraguay really struggling, as we've talked about, is at fullbacks, right? They either have very attacking fullbacks or they have to play centre backs there. They don't really have somebody in between. So not having too many opportunities for, say, Luis Diaz to go one-on-one with a fullback, that might end up being good news for us if we can really pack the midfield, which is something we have players capable of doing. There's definitely a really big ask to try and get the win. I think it's been a while. I think the last win was the crazy World Cup qualifiers when we were losing 1-0 in Barranquilla, and very late on we turned it around with Tacuara and Tony Sanabria. That's back in 2017, so it's 7 years ago now, and we're still looking for that win. But I mean, what I'd be looking at from this game is really just trying to disrupt Colombia, and then try and hold on and get a point. Because the way I would think of this group is, if you get 4 points, then you should have a good chance of going through. So you could draw this one, lose to Brazil, and then beat Costa Rica. So that might be my way of seeing it, rather than putting all the pressure on this game. But it's definitely going to be very, very difficult with the way Colombia are playing. It's almost two different. You're two teams in two different moments, right? If you think about it, you have this Colombia on this wave, riding this wave. They're doing so well, and Paraguay is like trying to find that momentum and pick it up. So it's definitely going to be a tough test there in Houston on Monday.
I was gonna ask Alejandro Dominguez if there's any way possible that we can bring that pastor to our game, the one that was in the first game, because we're gonna need him. We're gonna need everything that we can get, guys. I mean, I don't know. I'm gonna be praying before the game. I'm gonna be doing something, some ritual, because I'm ready to suffer in this match. I don't know about you guys, but after seeing this Colombia play lately, the way they've been playing, the certain players are just spectacular form right now, especially Luis Diaz. I mean, this is a player that I don't know. Out of the last games that I've seen in Defensores del Chaco of teams that have come here, Luis Diaz has probably been the one that has impressed me the most lately from a South American team. That's why he's playing in Liverpool. He's probably the player to stop, I believe, in this team. Even though James is the one that's gonna probably make the passes, make the difference. He's gonna be one of the keys, obviously, to stop. Also, that's why I think it's very important to have our best players out there. I mean, Andres Cubas, we didn't see him against Panama. Hopefully, he is fit for this game against Colombia, because we don't have another player that can get us the ball back as much as he does. So he's the aggressive one in the midfield, and we're gonna kind of need those players. I don't know why I see Fabricio Peralta also maybe having an important role in this game. I don't know if he's gonna start or if he's gonna come in the second half, but I do think you're gonna need those kind of players that can be aggressive in the midfield to get the ball back. And I do think we're gonna need to make it a battlefield out there for them. I don't think we can make them have the ball so easily. We need to show that from the first minute. We need to show ourselves that we can be the aggressive team, even if we don't have the ball. And that was something that I didn't see in Defensores del Chaco. It was Colombia moving the ball around, and I'm talking about that game because it wasn't that long ago. It's the last reference that we have in an official match between these two games, and I saw a team that just couldn't get the ball back, that had no possession, like Ralph was saying, and we were never going forward. We were just defending, and they were running the pace. And that's something that cannot happen in this first game. We can't let them run the show the whole game. We're going to have to counterattack them in certain points. And that's where I think, Julian Ciso, Ramon Sosa can make the difference, with open spaces against defenders that are, in my way of looking at it, it is the weak point in this Colombia team. So you're going to have to attack them eventually, but you're going to have to especially keep that clean sheet. So I'm hoping that our goalkeeper, Carlos Coronel, has a perfect game, that he doesn't make any mistakes, especially because we've seen that, trying to get out of the box with the balls down there, trying to put it on the defender's feet. It probably has not been the best way. Sometimes you just got to put it out there in the midfield. You just got to put all to it in that ball. And I do think there are going to be certain keys in this game. I mean, Junior Alonso going up against Luis Diaz. If Matias Espinosa is not going to be our left back, it's probably one of the things that I think is going to make the difference. I mean, our defenders need to be perfect in that sense. And that's what I'm going to look into this game, and especially against Brazil also. We might not have that many opportunities to score, but defensively, we're going to have to do a perfect game, guys. And no mistakes back there, please. That's all I'm asking for in these two games.
And I think it's going to be interesting as well. I want to go on Ralph to finish it off, and obviously Fede can jump in. But ultimately, I'm curious to see how they will set up, because I think, like you said, what we've seen in these last three friendlies, we've seen mixed results, but I don't think we've kind of picked out, with the exception of obviously a few players like an Omar Alderete, like a Carlos Coronel, like an Andres Cubas, he's fit. I don't think we've kind of pinpointed a really strong lineup. We haven't obviously heard anything from now, and Ralph, feel free to, or Fede, feel free to jump in if need be, but I don't think we've been able to see a probable lineup from Garnedo for this game as of yet. So it just shows that we still are kind of deciphering what could be the best starting lineup for this game, particularly, and also for the rest of the tournament, Ralph. So I'm curious to see how that goes, because I think ultimately we're going to have to play in a way that I think can be defensive, obviously move the ball around better than what we've seen in the last few games, and then try to rely on those wingers like an Enciso, like a Almino if he plays, or Ramon Sosa. I think that's the hope in this game, at least.
Yes, it's hard to decipher because he will play. He usually plays a 4-3-3, but then the 4-3-3s are very different depending on personnel, because we talked about he will either play more traditional fullbacks who like to get forward a lot, like Matias Espinosa and Ivan Ramirez, or he's going to go more defensive and play like center backs, Junior Alonso and Gustavo Velasquez, basically being those more defensive players. What we might see what I would do is have Gustavo Velasquez, who I think has been actually one of our best players. So he's more a central defender, and then Matias Espinosa, who can attack more. So then you can sometimes almost shift and become a back three, which because Colombia play very narrow could help as well, and could help the team. And then the midfield, yeah, if we're missing Cubas, then we don't really have a player there as the anchor in terms of the ball winner. Possibly Matias Villasanti can go back there because he's been playing there for Gremio. But then what our big problem we've been seeing there is trying to get that link. Like, is it Matias Rojas? Is it Fabricio Peralta? Whoever it isn't Diego Gomez, so they can't do exactly the same job, because what Gomez can do is he's really more of that 8 that can come back and forward, and we don't really have anybody there. And then finally with the wingers, yes, does he play, for example, Julio Ciso in the middle, which he tried to do in one game? Does he play him on the left, which he did in another game, and he seemed to play a bit better out there on the left? That was against Panama. So it's a lot of questions. And then it's between Julio Enciso, Miguel Almiron, and Ramon Sosa, really 3 best players in terms of technically and form. How do you fit those 3 together, which is something he hasn't really been able to do, and find them because if you play all those 3, then you don't, and you want Mati Rojas, you don't have a 9 like a striker, which he hasn't done so far. He hasn't played without a 9. So there's a lot of questions because we're just not sure. I think especially with that forward part, how do you fit all of those players into this system?
Yeah, if I'm Carnero, guys, and I'm looking at the 3 games that this team played, I'm not so sure about which team I'm going to put against Colombia from the tactical point of view, and even from the players, because he really tried out pretty much everyone. He gave the opportunity to everyone in midfield, especially. I do think in attack, he pretty much has his mind set up in the sense that we're going to play with a striker. We're going to play with a center forward. It's either going to be Alan Barreiro or it's going to be Alex Arce. He needs to pick one out of the 2. I think Adam is running a little bit better in that race. And then you got to make up your decision, because I do think Almiron is going to start in this team between Julio Enciso and Ramon Sosa. And I do think Julio Enciso was more productive in the friendlies than Ramon Sosa. So I think Julio has an advantage in that particular spot, especially because he kind of also he gained during this time in Europe the opportunity to come back in the field, be more of a defensive winger, also try to help out, which is something that we're seeing from Almiron totally do it in Newcastle, especially in his earlier days when that team was so defensive. So I do think those are going to be our wingers. To be honest, I think that's something that's already made up. But then you have other players that are not coming in totally healthy, and I don't know if they're going to be fully prepared for the 90 minutes that we're going to need them in this game against Colombia. And that's where the subs come in. That's where you're going to probably need certain players in the second half. And I don't know what kind of game we're going to see in the second half with certain players coming in the game. Matias Rojas is going to run his ass off probably in this game against Colombia, so he's probably not going to be able to hold the 90 minutes. You're going to have to put in another midfielder, and I hope that whoever comes in the game is prepared for the job, because Fabricio Peralta does not have the international experience. Bobadilla does not have the international experience. These are very young players. So that's what Rafa is also talking about, right? We don't have players that can come in this game and make the difference, that we're certain that they're going to have a great game. Hopefully they shut up everybody here in Paraguay, because all the criticism that's in top of this squad, they're going to have to try to let go of that situation playing out there. They're going to have to show their best version individually and as a group also. And that's what we haven't seen either, right? We haven't seen a team being built up together. That's why Roberto's also mentioning we're not coming into this tournament with a strong team. But hey, we got 3 games to build that team, Roberto.
We definitely do. And I think the second game will definitely be another big test. So it's like back to back. It's not even, getting a breather in the sense of being able to play a team that's kind of lesser quality. We have Brazil after that game as well. And Fede, I think that one's going to be more of a defensive matchup, I would say, because certainly with the way that Brazil has, but there is the caveat that even though Brazil is Brazil and they've kind of always demonstrated that. We haven't seen the results have been very much a flashy Brazil, you would say. They suffered in essentially ever since Dorival really came up. Obviously, they barely got the win against England. They drew Spain. They barely beat Mexico. It was a last-minute goal from Endrick. And then they had the game against the United States where they also suffered as well. So that can give some hope for Paraguay that perhaps if they play their cards right, they can also get a good result, even though if they are massive underdogs.
Yeah, and you mentioned that on the preview episode that you guys talked about Brazil. Brazil is one thing in the World Cup; it's another thing in the Copa America. The motivation is not the same for these guys also. And yeah, they got something that they got to take. They got some weight that they got to take out of them, especially after what they did in the World Cup, where they couldn't make it to the final stages. And you have Argentina being the huge champion of South America, so they obviously got the responsibility to be the #1 team in this group. But if they don't get the results in the first games, we might see a Brazil that's going to kind of be shaken up. They're going to be talking about who are we going to bring as a coach, because they were waiting for Ancelotti, and then they had to pick up a manager out there from their local league, and they're coming in with several doubts in that locker room. I mean, obviously they have the threats with Vinicius, they have the threat with Endrick, with Rodrigo. Those three are going to be really hard to stop if they can link up, if they start playing together, because I believe that Endrick is not going to start in this team, but everyone in Brazil is saying, hey, what is our coach doing? He needs to start. Hope maybe by that second game, if they don't win the first match in this group, or Costa Rica stuns everyone and they get up and they get a draw or something, we might see the strongest starting 11 from Brazil against us, right? Trying to get that win to secure their spot. I do think we're gonna have to be ready for probably a very hard match. But I'm not scared I'm not scared about this Brazil. I mean, out of the last Brazilian teams that I've seen over the last couple of years, I mean, I would say this is the one that it's very young. That they haven't come out together as a group either. I think they even have some issues like we have in playing style. They don't look like they're enjoying themselves out there, and they suffer the games in certain points. They don't have the balance in their game right now. So hey, why not attack this team now? Why not go for a historic win against Brazil? I'm not gonna go crazy if we lose against Colombia. The game I'm aiming against the two giants that are in this group is Brazil, to be honest with you guys. Yeah, a lot of people are going to say, no, Brazil has all the titles, Brazil historically. I don't care. Brazil right now does not scare me. And that's the game that I think we need to point at to win, because out of the two games, we got to win at least one. We have to get some points out of one of these two games to try to do something against Costa Rica.
Yeah, Ralph, I mean, obviously, I mentioned the Colombia game as the game to win. Fede has mentioned the Brazil game. What do you look at when you look at these two, and especially the game against Brazil now, focusing on it?
Yeah, I think between the two teams, just based on form and the style of the teams and where they are at the moment in their situation, in a way, Brazil is more winnable than Colombia. I think they're both very difficult games, but also the timing, as Fede mentions, might help us, because usually Brazil against CONCACAF teams win very comfortably. I remember them playing Costa Rica in a World Cup. Maybe it was like 98, and they win like 5-1 or something. And it wasn't a particularly good team until that moment, and then that kicked off their run. And you look at this team. I mean, there's so many good individuals in Brazil, but as a team, they are struggling a bit. If they have a good game in that first match against Costa Rica, they might make a few changes for Paraguay. We might be able to ride our luck in Las Vegas, which would be a way to try and get something again out of that game. Winning sounds very difficult, but I think, Roberto, you pointed out, we've drawn the last 4 Copa America games with Brazil. Paraguay naturally seems to up their level against two particular rivals, which is Brazil and Argentina. It's just a historic thing. And so maybe rather than Colombia, it's this game that really gets everybody motivated. And also what's really interesting, I was just looking at the last time Brazil beat us 4-0, right, in the last game, the World Cup qualifier in Brazil. That team was totally different. There's a few names still there, but essentially the person that ran us into the ground that day was Dani Alves, who was captain. And look where he is now. So just think how different the team is if that was your captain the last time we played. So a lot has changed. Um, I think with Brazil as well, what we're able to do much better than we should be able to do against Colombia is usually the build up in Brazil, at least during Tite's time and more recently, it's been very kind of slow and easier and more predictable to defend against than a team like Colombia that plays with lots of kind of movement and people don't have as those positions kind of as fixed. So I don't know. Out of these two games, I would think maybe we have a better possibility for Brazil. I'm still thinking draws though in both of these games. I'm not saying we can go out and beat these teams, but where we might pick up the point, the key point before the Costa Rica game, I think it could be Brazil.
And ultimately, Fed, it all really depends on what we see in the Colombia game. I think if they get a win there, say it from a dream perspective, at least there in the Brazil game, it doesn't seem like it'll be the end of the world to get the loss, because then ultimately the last game against Costa Rica, who are kind of the minnows of this group, at least for them, it feels as if though they have the advantage. So you want to get on the right foot, but also, yeah, if you feel as if though they can do something against Brazil, which like Ralph had said, they always seem to play it to their strengths more, why not?
We have a lot of players that have played in the Brazilian league. We have a lot of players that are playing currently in the Brazilian league, and they are accustomed to playing against Brazilian players. And I don't know. I think that could be a certain advantage. And with this, with all these doubts around Brazil, I don't know why I see that could be the game to make the difference in this group, especially as we're heading into that third game, because there are only two scenarios heading into Costa Rica. You're either going to be probably totally out of the group and just round up the calendar, and we're going to be all talking about, hey, is Garnetto still going to be our coach for the qualifiers? Or we're either going to head into that Costa Rica with an opportunity to qualify still, and maybe it'll be very tight still, and we're still fighting for that first spot even. We don't know how it could really work out, but I'm looking into that's a must-win situation for Paraguay. And those are the games that we kind of had trouble lately, guys, where we had to go out there and look for the results, right? Where we have to try to have the ball a bit more against unexperienced teams, against teams that gave us the ball a lot more. And those are the games that I believe are the ones that we struggle. We try to do a little bit more with Kaku lately, give him the ball in the midfield, and we haven't been able to be that team, the team that has the possession, the team that can control the game. And I do think that's what people are going to expect against Costa Rica. Either way, no matter what happens against Colombia, no matter what happens against Brazil, the only win that people are going to expecting that you get in this group, especially here in Paraguay, is the game against Costa Rica, especially because they're going with a very young team. Nobody's expecting for them to get through, but some people are expecting for us to be a strong team in this group and maybe do something, maybe be the surprise. I don't think anybody is expecting anything from Costa Rica, but I am waiting something from Costa Rica, especially because they have a very intelligent coach under Alfaro, and I do think he's going to come in with a very good strategy for all three games, but especially in that first game against Brazil, guys. I don't know why I think Costa Rica could do something against Brazil, and that could be a game changer in the group, right? If anybody takes points away from Colombia or Brazil, it opens up the game and the conversation totally.
I was about to say, Ralph, can you imagine a situation that Paraguay goes into the final game with the chance to qualify because they got 2 points, or at least they're unbeaten after the two games against Brazil and Colombia, but it's the game against Costa Rica, which is ultimately the easiest one, that adds a bit more pressure. Or like I said, or we go into a situation where we're with two losses and we're already out of it, and Garnetto can try out other players and just start to think about what we can do moving forward for the qualifiers.
Well, if we get to the stage where we're playing Costa Rica and we're out, I think Garnero has to win 4-5-0 or he loses his job. Let's be to be very kind of blunt about it. He's going to be in a lot of trouble looking towards the qualifiers, or they will give him the two qualifiers, the next combo, and that will be it. If we really fall apart, so there would be a lot of pressure on Costa Rica going into that. If we go in with a chance of qualifying, and we were to not to mess up, then it would bring back some kind of nightmares. We just talked about the 2-1 win over Colombia, our last win. If you remember what that did, that set up a home game against Venezuela to qualify for the World Cup against a very young team. Because if you remember, they took their youth team, Venezuela, or their younger players, and we messed up and we lost. So this would be a similar situation, right? If we do the hard work against Brazil and Colombia to put ourselves in a position where a win takes us through, and then we mess up against the youngest team and the weakest team of the group in terms of FIFA rankings, and very clearly it's the team that had to qualify to get there. That would also be a big disappointment. So I mean, really, in terms of must wins, the Costa Rica is a must win, but also I think in an emphatic style. So there has to be a way, and especially for Garnero, I think is a big test of him tactically against what Fede is mentioning, Alfaro, who's a very good coach tactically, a very intelligent coach. And so there it's for Garnero to say, well, actually, I got this job, but they weren't maybe both going for the job, because we don't know if Alfaro actually did turn down the job or he was going for it or not. But it's like, this is the kind of moment when I show you that I'm the best man for this role, and this is what I can do, and get some of those tactics right and win well. So it's interesting, the Costa Rica game. There's going to be big pressure either way, because, regardless of the tournament itself, but just for Paraguay and for the situation they're in, it's a game they're going to have to win, and have to win well.
Yeah, Fede. I mean, I want to go into. I'm curious to see what Ralph says as well. We'll obviously make our predictions afterwards, but let's say Paraguay do indeed qualify. Let's say they do it. Who goes out? Because you got Brazil and Colombia, but who do you feel as if though is the team that could disappoint out of the two if Paraguay were to go through?
I know I did say Brazil has been shaken up lately, but I think Colombia could be a team that can let a lot of people down in this group. There's a lot of hype. There's a lot of expectations. They're coming in very high, but if they lose a game, that streak is over and they're back to reality. So why not be us to bring them back to reality in that first game? That would actually be very fun to see that situation. Probably the first surprise result in the Copa America. Why not be us? Let's be open to that situation. And I think out of the three teams and out of the expectations that I have, if Colombia ends up losing just one game, their situation could just totally turn around. So I'm going with Colombia being the letdown in this group. That's what I want. Also, Roberto, I don't want Colombia to run through everybody like a lot of people are expecting.
Ralph?
Yeah, if we're looking at the situation whereby Paraguay have somehow got through, let's say they managed to pick up 5 points because they drew Colombia, Brazil, and they won against Costa Rica, then it would all come down to that Brazil-Colombia game in terms of who can get through. One of them would want to win, and usually that is where Colombia have slipped up against Brazil, right? There's been like a mental block, or it's been very difficult for them to get past Brazil. So maybe that's where suddenly kind of what we call jerarquía in Spanish, right? Like just the history and kind of the weight of the shirt pushes Brazil through in that last game. And so then it ends up Colombia who don't make it. But of course, this is a big if, because this is assuming Paraguay can take points off them as well, which we've been talking about isn't going to be easy.
It's not going to be easy. And, we'll get into predictions just in a bit, but I do want to ask you what you feel is the player that has the most attention on it, because obviously Garnero is going to come with a lot of pressure regardless of what happens, in a good way or in a bad way. But in terms of the players, who's one, and I'll go to Ralph on this one first, who's one player that you feel like, one player that you expect to hopefully do well, and one player that you feel as if though he needs to perform well, because I think if he doesn't, then it's just going to be more pressure on him and what he can do for the national team. What's that? And yeah, just what you're looking forward to from those players.
Yeah, I think the most exciting player for people that maybe don't watch Paraguay a lot and are tuning in for this tournament and they're going to get to see them, I think is Ramon Sosa, because Ramon Sosa is playing so well in Argentina. When he's been playing in World Cup qualifiers, he's been one of those shining stars for Paraguay. And he's been linked with a move to the Premier League. So he's kind of on the verge of something big, even though he's 24 now, so he's not that young. But I think he will be a very exciting player to watch should he get the game time. But then in terms of just absolute the best player, it's Julio Enciso by like a long way. Julio Enciso is like this generational talent. We've been unlucky that he had so many injuries. He's back with the coach that gave him his debut when he was a player at Libertad. So it's like there's so many things that could go right for Julio Enciso if he can get the mental part right and perform to his ability, because technically he's the best player we've got by far.
Yeah, Fede. I mean, I'm going for Enciso as the one to watch for. And for Ramones too. I think he's the one that I think for a lot of people who haven't watched Paraguay or have been watching Talleres, I think will be very expectant. And I think as well, a lot of eyeballs will be given on Paraguay because they'll be playing Brazil, because they'll be playing on Colombia. So, I'm curious to see which player that you feel will have not just the most pressure, but who you feel excited about, because I think there's gonna be a lot of people that if it goes well for Paraguay, I think we'll finally have the attention given to them.
Yeah, there are certain players that I look at this list and I'm hoping good things from them, and because I want uh, things that to go well. And Gustavo Velasquez is a story that has really caught my attention. I'm really happy for him, for what he has done and what he's brought to the team, because he has a character. You can see that he has that leadership also. And if he's coming into the starting team, I think he can bring a lot of things to this team. But this is a very experienced player, so if I'm going with the younger names, maybe a surprise in certain games, and hopefully he makes the best out of the minutes that they give him, is Damian Bobadilla. I don't know why I see Damian Bobadilla really fitting in well in this midfield in certain games, in certain moments, and I do think that he can be a player that can evolve also in this tournament. He's very young. We know that Julio Enciso, he's waiting for the spotlight. He's been waiting for this moment. He's been getting ready for this tournament. I don't think he's 100%, to be honest with you guys. I have not seen the Julio Enciso that I saw in Libertad in these friendlies, but there's going to be a lot of expectation around him. So either if he has the starting role or he's coming off the bench, he's going to be the player that makes the difference, no doubt about it. And I do think he's going to have a spark in certain games, but I'm going to go with Alan Barreto, guys. I'm going to stick with the strikers. And between Alex Arce and Alan Barreto, I love Alan Barreto, what he has brought to the team. The way that he fights every ball. He can also be a leader in the pitch. I don't know if in the locker room, but I think he's a player that can also motivate the rest of the squad. And we kind of need those players. I'm not going to wait much from Gustavo Gomez. I'm not going to wait much more from Miguel Almiron. I'm kind of over these guys. If they surprise me and they end up being the stars of this team, I'm going to be the first one clapping out there. But I'm done with these guys. I mean, I waited enough from them to be the stars of this team. So I'm pointing my finger at other players from this list.
That makes sense. I love that. I think a lot of people have also felt the same way, kind of a generation that hasn't been able to do much. You think, all right, let's look at the other players. Let's look at some of those guys who haven't been on the spotlight and they can do something. So yeah, no, I'm with you there. I think that's gonna also depend on how they will feel. It could even be the last international tournament that they could play in as well. So I think this is also a lot of pressure for some of these players who are kind of reaching the end of their international careers. They have to hope for a big tournament, and ultimately, I think we're all in agreement that if Paraguay get out of this group, if they do, that's a big success. Looking at the quarterfinals, if they do it, they would have to probably take on the United States or Uruguay. I think we're all in agreement. I want to go to Ralph on this one first to close it out on that discussion before we go into our ultimate predictions. But I think if they get out of the group, even if they were to kind of lose badly to either Uruguay or the United States, it's still kind of a success. Well, maybe I shouldn't say that because I don't think I want to see my team blown out, and I don't think Paraguay will, even if they do get out of the group. But I think if they do get out of the group, regardless of what happens in the quarterfinals, I think it's more than enough of what Canada was able to do with this team.
Yeah, I think if they get out of the group, then that's laid the foundation for what's going to be the World Cup qualifiers, because there's also going to be difficult games where you have to find points however you can, and maybe the quarterfinal game won't have such a big kind of pressure on it, I suppose, by having got out of there. And anyway, once you get out of the group in knockout football, then it's kind of anything can happen, and you can draw all 3 games and get to the final, which Paraguay have done in the past. So yeah, we'll we'll see after that. I think, but the main focus is definitely on the group.
Fede?
I think it goes beyond the results, guys. I think I think it has to do with the way that we play, the character that we show out there, that we show that we can be a strong team, mentally strong also, give up a fight in every single game. I mean, Canada just lost to Argentina, but they have certain bright spots to take from this game. Hopefully, after we play Colombia, after we play Brazil, we're not talking about, hey, we lost by so many goals. No. We're talking about something to build from. That's what I want to see out of these 3 games, more than the results, more than qualifier, more than trying to get a title after so many years. The last time we won the Copa America was back in the 70s, but we're trying to build something for the World Cup. We're trying to build something for 2030, I would even say, where that's the World Cup we're going to play. That's the only one we got guaranteed so far.
Yeah, but I think we always do want to play the one before as well, to get ready for it. And obviously, it's an expanded World Cup, and obviously, with some bias aside for myself and Ralph, it's in the United States, it's in North America. So why wouldn't we want to see that? But yeah, I think before we get into our predictions, I think that is ultimately the goal. I want to see a Paraguay team that can perform well, even if they lose all 3 games, even if they lose all badly. No, sorry, if they lose all 3 games, at least if they show some heart and some determination and actually want to play, at least that can build upon what they can do in the qualifiers. Do I think they have more than enough to qualify out of the group? Absolutely, they definitely have. We've seen even Paraguay teams of the past kind of go against the odds and be able to get results here. But yeah, I think it's going to be a tough ask. So I guess we'll go now into our final segment, our predictions, the one that we all are waiting for. And we have the first one. We'll go to Ralph on this one, and then I'll give my prediction, and I'll let Fede close it out here. You're going to be in that game in Houston. Ralph, Paraguay against Colombia. I expect a sea of yellow over there in Houston. Obviously, it's been hot, but the game is indoors. The pitch is obviously very, very going to be dependent, because obviously you see some stadiums with artificial turf. We also see some natural grass. So I think Energy Stadium will have that to the advantage. But how do you see this first game going on between Paraguay and Colombia over there in Texas?
So I'm playing a prediction game with some friends, and I've already predicted this one. And unfortunately, I put 2-0 to Colombia. So I guess in my heart, I'd love us to do better, but I'm looking at a Colombia win for this one.
Yeah, I think I feel that way too. I think I'm going to be a bit more optimistic in saying that Paraguay will score. I think they'll score first, actually, but then Colombia ultimately gets back on the right foot and win 2-1. Fede.
Colombia scores first. We end up tying the game 1-1.
Okay. All right. So we're on a different scenario here. The next game is against Brazil. I'll go first. I think this one can be a bit more closer. Ultimately, I think the morale is still going to be a bit low after the first game, but I don't see it. I don't. I think this Brazil team is just individually very good, and I think they could snatch a result in this one. It'll be a very gritty game, though. I think it's going to be a very gritty game, because I think Paraguay will step it up, but I think Brazil somehow have the breakthrough and get the 3 points, and ultimately we say goodbye to our Copa America group stage performance. 1-0 Brazil in Vegas. Fede?
This is the game that we're gonna win, guys. This is the one that I'm pointing at. This is my big prediction, my biggest prediction of the Copa America. 2-1 for Paraguay, and hopefully we get to that game against Costa Rica, living it and still fighting it. So
Wow.
Paraguay win it.
Wow. Okay. So I've put in Paraguay have been eliminated from the Copa America. Fede has put in that Paraguay will still be alive in the competition on the final day. Ralph, it's up to you to see who gets the majority.
I was thinking that Paraguay in this game is where they could pick up the draw. So I was thinking of a 1-1. So that still only puts them on 1 point for me, but we're still in with a chance, I think, because I think 4 points could get you through.
So that's what you're saying. You're going for the draw. You're going for the draw.
Yeah, against Brazil. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I'm the negative Nancy in this one. I'm the one that's negative on this one, but because I think Paraguay will beat Costa Rica. Gritty game, but 1-0. They should do it. But I guess all up to you then. Ralph, I'll go to you this one. You'll be in the game in Austin, a small stadium. Paraguayans have played there before. Obviously, there's no Paraguayans on this team that's played in Austin, but that Q2 stadium, it's the last game. Obviously, Brazil-Colombia happening on the final day. Do Paraguay have enough to qualify and head into the final game with the chance? With the chance to the quarterfinals.
Yeah, I think Paraguay will have it tough against Gustavo Alfaro's team, but they're gonna pull through with that experience and win 2-1.
Interesting. And so, who goes in with them?
Well, so then Paraguay have 4 points. So I don't know what it means, but let's just say Brazil go through with them.
Wow. Wow, look at that. Imagine that. Fede, you're already coming off with some predictions already. Do you see the same thing?
No, I actually see a draw against Costa Rica. I think this is going to be a very hard team, and we're going to come in after a very good win against Brazil, and we're going to need another win to secure that first spot. The way I see it, the way I'm imagining it, and no, I think it's going to be a draw, but that gives us enough points to qualify, and that will also leave probably Colombia out, like I was saying before, and it would bring in Brazil with us to the next phase.
So, okay. So, obviously, you guys have predicted it right. Heading into the last game, thinking ahead, let's say they do qualify. So, you're saying for both of you, second place? Is that it? So, none of them will win the group?
Yeah. Second place. Yeah.
That for you as well?
Yeah, I got the same prediction, second place.
Right. So, who do you feel will win Group C then? Because you got the United States, you got Uruguay, you got Panama and Bolivia. Who do you see winning that group?
Uruguay.
For me, it's Uruguay.
Yeah.
And looking into that quarterfinals, do you see Paraguay with the chance to do a surprise and beat Uruguay, or do you think it's the end of the road there? I'll go to Ralph first.
It's probably the end of the road, although you do always have the advantage with Bielsa that he puts his teams to work so hard. That for some reason he's put them in Miami is so hard. It's making them work so hard. And so Bielsa's teams do sometimes run out of steam. But I don't know if the quarterfinals is where they'll run out of steam. So I think we go out there.
The game is in Vegas, by the way. If Paraguay were to go as runners-up and face the winner of Group C, it would be in Vegas. If they were to win the group and take on the runners-up of Group C, it would be in Glendale and Phoenix at State Farm Stadium. Also 2 indoor stadiums. Fede, do you feel it's also the end of the road for Dani Garnedo if they do take on Uruguay?
No, I want us to be the biggest surprise of this Copa America, guys. And I want penalties against Uruguay. So I'm going with penalties. I'm going with a very boring 0-0, no goals in this game. We're going to penalties. Carlos Coronel, do something. Please do something in the penalties.
So, okay, wait a minute. So we're all over the place here. I mean, it's good. I love it. So, Fede, that means Paraguay. So you're saying Paraguay beat Uruguay. That's your prediction.
I said it went to penalties. I'm saying it's going to penalties. I don't know if Carlos Coronel is going to pull through there. That's the big doubts that I have. I have my doubts again with our goalkeeper. But if you're gonna put me on the spotlight here, Roberto, I'm gonna say we're gonna pull the biggest surprise probably of the Copa America. We're gonna go through and leave out this Uruguay just like we did in the under 23. Don't forget about that. We already faced it. Marcelo Bielsa and his scary Uruguay. And we left them out in the group stage. In the under 23, they're not going to the Olympics like we are. Just to remember everybody, just to remind everybody. And so, hey, why not? Why not do it?
Okay. All right, Fede. So you're still alive in this one. So I'm going to put you on the spot. So with that semifinal, that would mean I would assume you pick USA to finish runners up in their group with Uruguay, correct? Is that your prediction?
Yeah,
okay.
Of course.
Then you got Brazil, USA in the quarterfinal. Who do you see in that one?
Brazil, obviously.
Okay, so now semifinal in Charlotte, Brazil, Paraguay. They already faced each other. You already picked the win. Does it go there, or do we say no? It's over. It's over. You can't go more further than that.
I think we're going to be pretty tired after very hard games. I think we're going to be kind of hit up with a couple of injuries already. We don't have that kind of a squad to play every single game in a tournament like this. That's enough, guys. I think that's the best possible journey that you can probably get in this Copa America. And I'm going to be jumping all over the place. I'm going to be in Palma. I'm going to be in front of Panteón de los Héroes, which is the place where we always celebrate the big wins. I'm going to be there after we eliminate, hopefully, a team after we get out of the group stage. That's what I want. I want to see this country happy. I want to see a couple of wins, we kind of need it to have that impact in this tournament. We need to get the fans by our sides again.
So you're picking them to finish in third, fourth place? What's your thing? Because there's a playoff. There's a final playoff for the fourth place team.
Let's go. Yeah, yeah. I think we're gonna end up in fourth place. To be honest with you guys,
Okay.
I don't think we're gonna go far beyond that. Right? Fourth place.
Interesting. Fede says fourth place. I say group stage elimination. Ralph says quarterfinal. So we're all over the place, man. One of us is going to be right, or we might be completely wrong. And I want to finish it off here with one more thing. If Paraguay were to achieve the biggest surprise of them all, to win the Copa America, I'll go to Ralph on this one. If Paraguay were to win, what would a third Copa America title mean for Paraguay to win it in this circumstances, beating all the odds? We've already seen some surprises with like your Leverkusens. I mean, 20 years ago, we saw Greece win the European Championship. So, the shocks are not, they happen a lot, but it doesn't happen too much. But what would a third Copa America title mean to win it? What would it mean for you? What would it mean for your family, for the Paraguayans? Yeah, just in general, like go for it. Biggest dream.
They'd have to put a statue of Garnero outside Defensores del Chaco or something. It would be incredible. It would be incredible. I mean, if that's happening, I'm gonna be in the final in Miami. However much those tickets are, I'll be finding a way to get there. It would be huge, and you would see the 2010 scenes again. So 2010, you have people out it was really cold in Paraguay. It was the winter, and everyone was out there in the Panteón de Héroes celebrating the team. And you're going to see something like that again. And of course, then who knows what this team could do in the World Cup? If you win the Copa America and you've just won the Sudamericano as well, don't forget to go to the Olympics. Suddenly, you're like one of the danger teams in South America. But yeah, that would be very, very fun if that.
Biggest pipe dream of all, Fede. What would it mean? I mean, we've already seen Paraguay go against all odds and win the Preolímpico again. This is a whole different ball game. This is an entirely different thing. But we saw what it meant for kind of this generation to celebrate it. We saw the first title in the kind of the social media era to do that. But yeah, for you, Fede, I mean, what would a third Copa America title mean? Especially since you've already seen Paraguay play in a final in 2011 and lost to Uruguay. What would it mean to get some revenge and win it again over there in the United States?
It would be a huge revelation, I believe, in this tournament, not just for us Paraguayans, but for the whole world. I mean, for the whole continent, and they would look at us differently. Also, I do think we have to kind of get that mindset on the players. Also, let's go out there and let's try to make this flag be respected again. Every time somebody sees this jersey, they're gonna say, "Oh, that's Paraguay. That's a hard team." That's not what they're saying lately, And I want to get that respect back, and I want the players to kind of feel that situation. Also, maybe the U.S., maybe this tournament is that tournament, like Ralph was saying at the beginning of the show, that 2007 Copa America was our pathway to the next step, and maybe this is what we kind of need, Roberto. And if that ends up happening, it would be crazy. People would fall in love again with this Albirroja like we haven't seen in these last couple of years, like we haven't seen happening ever since 2010. And I'm going to go a little beyond that even. If they make it to the semifinals, which is a game beyond what I predicted, because I said they're only getting.
No, you said they would go. No. You said they would go to the semifinals. You said that.
Yeah. I'm sorry. If they make it to the finals, if they make it to the final, if they make it to the last game, I'm gonna make a promise.
Okay, let's hear it.
If they make it to the final, I'm gonna get a tattoo. What do you guys say? I'm gonna get a new tattoo.
Okay.
Fantastic. I'm gonna get a Guarani Vision, and the Paraguayan flag. What do you guys say?
Do it. Yeah. There you go. We are witnesses.
We are witnesses. I am putting that on the spot. I'm gonna tweet that out later and put you right on the spot. They
gotta make it to the final, though.
They gotta make it to the final. It can be done. It's a big promise, but yes, you will get a Guarani Vision tattoo if they were to do it. Hey, it's a good way to finish off a good episode to dream. But yeah, obviously, we hope that everyone will enjoy Paraguay in this tournament and the Copa America in general. For those that obviously are tuning in, you got the Euros happening at the same time, so it's a big summer of soccer, as we say here in the States, or football, wherever you say it. So definitely be expecting. And as always, we'll be covering Paraguay, no matter what happens to them. If they bounce out of the group stage, quarterfinals, semifinals, final, or champion, we will be here. We will be here to discuss all of it as we close out our Copa America preview episode for the Paraguayan national team for the Copa America here in the United States. We'll be obviously giving you all the coverage that we can get with Fede over there in Paraguay on the ground, myself in Vegas, and Ralph in Texas for the 2 games in Houston and Austin. We'll bring it all. So obviously, to close out another great episode of Guarani Vision for myself, Roberto Rojas, Fede Perez, and Ralph Hannah, thank you so much for listening in. See you soon.